and girls the equal opportunity to participate and excel in competitive sports. The second case, meanwhile, relates to ending automatic birthright citizenship. Under Trump's order, US-born child can be denied US passports if one of the parents is not a legal US citizen. Lower federal courts, remember, have unanimously rejected Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship. But the crucial ruling from the Supreme Court's conservative-leaning bench is now awaited by millions across the country. Apart from these two cases, the US Supreme Court, in fact, will also be deciding on a lawsuit by J.D. Vance. It seeks to loosen campaign finance limit that regulates the political spending and ensures a level playing field. If the court's decision goes in the GOP's favor, it would basically give political parties a more central role in the flow of political money around elections. The US Supreme Court remains divided on ideological lines. This year itself, the court has delivered split decisions in 10 cases this year. And the way things stand, the ideological tilt favors conservative side by 6-3. For more on these developments, let's go straight across now to our correspondent Susan Teherani, who's been tracking that very closely. Susan, a major development coming in regarding the Supreme Court upholding that transgender ban. Tell us more about the sentiment that is expected to really come up, because like we said, this is not just a legal process. It has been a major culture debate on ground in the United States. And of course, this will be a setback for LGBTQ rights.
To a certain extent, I think ideologically most Americans agree that, women fought so hard for their rights when it came to sports, and to have, someone who's biologically male come and compete when they're not physically in the same category has sort of rattled some feathers across America. Maybe not in New York or Los Angeles, but middle America, where a lot of girls rely on these sports to get scholarships, for example, to universities to go ahead and play pro. The conservatives had a sort of a more effective message in trying to translate that into how it would affect ordinary Americans. But nonetheless, there is that question right now that, biological aspects aside, how is this going to ultimately affect things culturally as well, moving towards a more traditional outlook when it comes to this issue. But I think most Americans are going to agree with the Supreme Court, at least on this particular issue. But I think the conversation is definitely going to continue, notably as we go into the midterm elections, where each lobby will try to convince its supporters that whether this was the right forward or whether America is, quote unquote, going backwards.
Right, and Susan, of course, we are also awaiting that judgment on birthright citizenship. But let's get our viewers a sense of what also happened on Monday in a major development that came in from the courts, and what unfolded and came as a setback for President Donald Trump. The Supreme Court on Monday, remember, ruled that states can count ballots that arrive after Election Day. This was a 5-4 decision that basically rejected a Republican-led attack on laws in more than half the states and the District of Columbia that permit mailed ballots to arrive and be counted some number of days after the election, provided they are postmarked by Election Day. So basically, the US Supreme Court backed state laws that allow mail-in ballots received after Election Day to be counted, rejecting a Republican-led challenge to a 5-day grace period in Mississippi. The justices overturned a lower court's decision, basically, that had deemed Mississippi's law inconsistent with US statutes that set the timing of federal elections for the presidency, Senate, and House of Representatives. Remember, Donald Trump last year vowed to end the use of mail-in ballots nationwide before this November's midterm elections. States that allow mail ballots to be counted after Election Day have reacted with relief. Just to break this down further and what this really means ahead of the 2026 midterm polls, the outcome sparing officials the headache of changing their ballot rules just a few months before the midterm congressional elections. In just over half those states, the more forgiving deadlines basically apply only to ballots cast by military and overseas voters. How exactly has President Trump reacted? Well, he has slammed the Supreme Court's mail ballot ruling as detrimental to honest elections while praising a separate decision expanding his presidential authority to fire independent agency officials. Let's go back across now to our correspondent Susan Teherani. This, of course, is a setback for Donald Trump. He has also reacted quite sharply. Just lay out for our viewers what this really means coming crucially ahead of the midterm elections.
Yeah, the issue of mail-in ballots was really central to President Trump's campaign when he was running for a second term as U.S. president. He has argued time and again that mail-in ballots were one of the reasons he believed, he thinks he won the 2020 election or that he lost the 2020 election. But that was during the COVID era, and to a certain extent, among some Republicans, it was justified. But now, with the SAVE Act is hanging in limbo in Congress, that would essentially redefine how voting takes place and how votes are counted, who can vote, and whatnot, and what credentials are needed. I think this really provides a backdrop of what's to come in Congress regarding the SAVE Act as well. Because remember, mail-in ballots have been ongoing for many years, as far as we can remember, but it did have an uptick again, as I mentioned, during the COVID era. And now some are arguing that, it's really not necessary, only under certain conditions. A lot of Americans agree with that. But then, again, this is something, not just this setback, but also the talking points for the Democrats. It's going to be something that might actually help them in the midterms.
All right, we're leaving it there for the moment, Susan. Thanks very much for that. And while we are tracking the latest coming in from the Supreme Court, another setback now for U.S. President Donald Trump. In the latest, the U.S. Supreme Court ruling against Trump's order limit birthright citizenship. Remember, this is a ruling that has been highly anticipated with far-reaching implications. So we are going to be closely monitoring the reactions that come in on that front as well. Let's now shift focus to South Africa. It is on edge as the June 30th deadline set by anti-immigrant groups comes into effect, and thousands of police officers have been deployed across the country to maintain law and order. Immigrants in large numbers seeking assistance from the government to return to their home countries. Massive crowds gathered in Johannesburg as anti-illegal immigration protests gain momentum. Hundreds of protesters gathered in Durban for a march against illegal immigration, with the police monitoring the crowds as demonstrators waved South African flags and sang songs. Organizers said the protest was aimed at drawing attention to what they described as rising levels of illegal immigration, crime, and pressure on public services.
Today we have gathered here to march against illegal immigration in our country, which we have seen the high numbers rising over the past few years of illegal immigration. But it's not only the illegal immigration that we're marching for, but it's also the crimes committed by illegal immigrants in our country, as well as the strain on infrastructure in our country, as well as government healthcare systems.
We're out today because we want to fight for our country. We want to contribute to the change. We want the people, the immigrants that are destroying our country to go. And yes, we just want to be part of the change that's going to happen today.
In fact, the police have been deployed There have been concerns over safety and potential violence linked to the ultimatum as well.
The police are there. There is a deployment on top of the already existing police in the province, and I'm satisfied.
The anti-immigrant sentiment has spilled into many parts of South Africa. In fact, one part, hundreds joined anti-immigration protests, insisting their demonstrations were peaceful. Protesters called for the deportation of undocumented foreign nationals.
We want to continue and show like this that there is no problem. South African people are just saying only that illegal foreigners must go.
According to South Africa's government data, the country's immigrant population stands at 2.3 million. Most of these immigrants belong to Zimbabwe. 20% of South Africa's total immigrant population belongs to Mozambique. The country's landlocked neighbor, Lesotho, comes on the third spot with 11%. Major repatriation drive already underway. Nigeria and Ghana have repatriated nearly 2,000 people on government-sponsored flights. Citing concerns over their safety, authorities say more evacuations will follow suit. Zimbabwe and Mozambique have also repatriated smaller numbers of people. Over 8,000 Malawians, meanwhile, have left the country on government buses. The South African government has warned against violence and opportunistic crime, recalling the deadly unrest of 2021 that left around 350 people dead. During the widespread riots and looting, President Ramaphosa has called for calm. Meanwhile, the provincial leaders have pledged to prevent any repeat of previous outbreaks of xenophobic violence. And for more on these developments, our correspondent Calvin Ongmo getting us this report from Johannesburg on the latest. Take a look.
Although the South African government has declared today to be a normal working day, the situation on the ground tells a different story. Johannesburg, which is the country's economic hub and home to businesses serving people from across Africa, is unusually quiet, with many shops closed and streets so far less busy than normal. While some residents have gone about their daily routines, many others say they are not willing to take any chances, fearing a repeat of the July 2021 unrest when widespread looting claimed more than 300 lives. This is Calvin Ongmo from Johannesburg, South Africa for WION World is One.
India's opposition parties have stepped up their efforts against the Election Commission's special intensive revision exercise. The battle has now reached the table of India's top judge. 23 political parties have written a letter to the Chief Justice demanding his intervention in the matter. The opposition collective includes parties of the Opposition Alliance, Tamil Nadu's DMK and the Aam Aadmi Party as well, and an independent parliamentarian. The joint letter to the Chief Justice alleges biased conduct by the Election Commission. The opposition bloc has not released the content of the letter, but the Congress General Secretary Jairam Ramesh said the opposition parties are firmly anchored in sure solidarity, unity and resistance. The exercise is already underway in Karnataka, Meghalaya, Maharashtra, Jharkhand and Delhi. In Karnataka, the Election Commission has mapped 5.07 crore of 5.54 crore voters after comparing legacy and current electoral rolls. A total of over 59,000 booth-level officers will undertake house-to-house visits and distribute enumeration forms to the residents. Draft rolls will be out on the 5th of August. And objections can be also filed until the 9th of September. The Supreme Court has already pronounced its ruling on SIR. On May 27, two-judge bench consisting of Chief Justice Suryakant and Justice Bakshi, remember, unanimously upheld the special intensive revision in Bihar. The apex court ruled that the exercise was constitutionally valid and comes within powers of the Election Commission under Article 324 of the Indian Constitution. And in Tamil Nadu, the Vijay-led TVK government has stepped up its anti-corruption drive against the previous DMK regime. And now senior ministers are urging the governor to clear pending prosecution proposals against former ministers over allegations of corruption. Energy Resources and Law Minister, in fact, and Higher Education Minister reportedly met the governor and sought an early decision on requests for sanction to prosecute former DMK ministers and officials. Among the key cases discussed, including the Directorate of Enforcement's request to prosecute former electricity minister in the alleged cash for jobs scam. The TVK government reportedly forwarded a formal proposal to the governor around 3 weeks ago, seeking approval for the prosecution. The minister, in fact, Senthil Balaji, the ex-minister, faced criticism from the TVK government over alleged recruitment irregularities during his tenure as electricity minister. The TVK government claims the previous DMK government had substantially reduced the financial losses of the Tamil Nadu Electricity Board and that recruitment processes were delayed due to the Model Code of Conduct. However, Balaji has denied the allegations. Meanwhile, former Public Works and Highways Minister has already come under the scanner. The Directorate of Vigilance and Anti-Corruption has conducted searches at multiple locations in connection with alleged irregularities in road infrastructure projects. Velu has dismissed the searches as political vendetta, while the TVK government maintained that the action was based on evidence. However, Raj Bhavan has described the meetings as separate courtesy calls. The statements made no reference to discussions on pending prosecution proposals. The latest move comes amid the TVK government's broader anti-corruption campaign against the previous DMK government. The push for prosecution comes as political rivalry between the ruling TVK and the opposition DMK intensifies, with both parties accusing each other of political vendetta and corruption. The conservative leader Fujimori has been elected as the new president of Peru after securing a victory by the narrowest of margins. The victory comes on her fourth attempt to win the presidency. Fujimori will inherit a country that is battling the expansion of organized crime, rising extortion, contract killings, and deep political instability that has seen 8 presidents in 10 years. The 51-year-old won the 7 June runoff by less than 50,000 votes. In fact, this victory is significant to the political history of Peru, as this marks the return of the Fujimori name to the presidential palace more than 2 decades after the fall of her father, who served as Peru's president from 1990 to 2000 and is credited with defeating Maoist insurgency and helping curb hyperinflation during the economic crisis, but was later removed from office amid a major political scandal. He was convicted and jailed for corruption and human rights violations. Alberto still remains a polarizing figure in the country's history, and his legacy continues to divide the country. Coming back to the leader's campaign, who's now been elected as the new president, promised to restore law and order, strengthen security, revive hope, and also open dialogue with a deeply divided nation. Reactions to her victory have already started pouring in. The Bolivian president congratulated her, calling it the start of a new chapter for Peru. In Lima, supporters welcomed her victory, saying she has the ideas to move the country forward. Despite the grand promises, security experts are still skeptical and warn of the complexities against organized crime. Meanwhile, the defeated candidate is yet to accept the result, having earlier raised allegations of irregularities in the overseas vote. Fujimori will take the top job of Peru on the 28th of July for a 5-year term. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition. But here's a reminder to our viewers in India. You can watch all the 2026 FIFA World Cup matches on Z5. Erling Haaland and Norway will be facing the Ivory Coast in the round of 32 today. Tune in and catch all the action live.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION. World is One.
YO1 Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to YO1 Health Resort. Make your reservation at yo1.com.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is One.
Get the latest updates. Breaking news. Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is One.
The Israeli drone is above our heads all the time in Lebanon. More than 200,000 civilian homes have been destroyed. This looks like it used to be a toy for a little girl. Can't but wonder while I'm walking between all of this rubble, how many lives were destroyed, how many kids were traumatized, how many women lost their families. If this isn't a war crime, then what is? From the southern suburb of Beirut, I'm Radi Francis for WION The World is One.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
Hello and welcome. You're watching WION World is One. My name is Mohammed Saleh and these are the headlines. The American Supreme Court rejects Donald Trump's historic bid to restrict birthright citizenship. The court, in an eagerly awaited decision on the final day of its term, has ruled with a majority of 6-3 to maintain the right to American citizenship for nearly everyone who's born on the American soil. Now, Iran says that it will hold talks with the mediator Qatar on Wednesday regarding its frozen assets, denying that there is going to be any meeting with the American representatives in the Gulf state, where Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are also expected. And thousands of people march in cities across South Africa to demand for the departure of the undocumented foreign nationals after a weeks-long campaign that has sent thousands fleeing and has resulted in deaths of at least 4 people. And the United Nations says that tens of thousands of people need urgent food and shelter in Venezuela due to the devastation from 2 huge earthquakes. that killed more than 1,700 and has injured more than 5,000. The doctors warn of potential outbreak of disease. The Warsaw and Kiev have failed to reach an agreement on a swap of the Polish MiG-29 fighter aircraft for Ukrainian drone technologies. Myanmar's authorities have denied a request for ASEAN's special envoy to meet its deposed and detained Democrat leader Aung San Suu Kyi. The military plunged Myanmar into civil war in 2021 when it staged a coup ousting the Nobel Peace Prize laureate. And the United Nations has said that an Ebola outbreak could cost Africa up to $3.6 billion and hundreds of thousands of jobs. Ebola, for which there is no tested vaccine or treatment, has infected as many as about 1,307 people and has killed 377 people in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So as Russia intensifies its long-range strikes across Ukraine, Kiev is turning Crimea from a prized asset to a bit of a liability for Moscow. The Ukrainian drone strikes have caused a fuel and an electricity crisis in the occupied Black Sea Peninsula, triggering a state of emergency. Now, Ukraine has escalated its systematic campaign to try and degrade Russian military infrastructure across Crimea, targeting several key reconnaissance, air defense and logistical assets. In the latest, it has targeted Russia's multi-million-dollar Kasta 2E2 radar station, an important component of Russia's air surveillance network. The Russian Kasta 2E2 radar station is valued at an estimated $60 million, designed primarily for air defense, border surveillance and air traffic control. It specializes in the detection of low-altitude and stealth targets, including cruise missiles, drones and hovering helicopters. Instrumental view range is up to 150 kilometers. Kasta 2E2 can simultaneously track up to 30 to 50 targets, with the ability to measure their coordinates and also their trajectories. So as Ukraine's drone warfare proves to be one of the biggest challenges for Russia, Moscow is also now looking for options to boost its air defense systems. The Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov has said that Moscow is actively working on AI that provides decision support for air defense systems.
Artificial intelligence is currently used in drones mainly in two ways. The first is everything related to pattern recognition and automatic target acquisition, and the second is navigation.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that his forces had struck a satellite communication site in the Moscow region for the second time in a week. Zelensky called the attacks deep inside Russia to be long-range sanctions and fair retaliation for Moscow's daily barrages against Ukraine. And Kiev has hit targets in Russia as far as the Urals in recent months. Russia says that it shot down 419 Ukrainian drones over the country overnight, including in the Moscow region, where the authorities said that a 6-month-old baby was killed. The drone swarm comes days after Russia shot down 660 Ukrainian drones between Thursday and Friday, which is one of the highest figures since the beginning of the conflict. Now, after days of tension, the US and Iran are set to hold talks in Doha on Tuesday. The US President Donald Trump said that Iran has requested for the meeting in this, despite Iran denying that direct negotiations were planned with the United States on the deal aimed at ending the West Asia war. The Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghei has said that a delegation of the country's own expert would travel to Doha this week, but staunchly has denied any sit-down with the Americans.
Meeting in Doha is going to be perhaps important, perhaps not. We're going to find out. But we're winning militarily. It's almost won militarily, I would say. And it's really very simple. It's the denuclearization of Iran. We don't want them to have a nuclear weapon, and they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. And they've agreed to that, in all fairness.
The Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian signaled that Tehran remains open to implementing its recently signed Memorandum of Understanding with Washington. In a post on X, he, however, stressed that the US must honor its commitments if it expects Iran to do the same. Now, Iran's exercise of control over the highly strategic Strait of Hormuz has sparked repeated flare-ups, the latest of which came early on Sunday when the US Central Command said that it had attacked 10 Iranian military targets over what it called continued Iranian aggression against commercial shipping. Now, Iran said that it retaliated with strikes against the US bases in Kuwait and Bahrain. But while the strikes may have briefly fallen silent, the blockade remains a key sticking point in the negotiations. The strait comprises of Omani and Iranian territorial waters, but under international law, the two cannot generally block passage or charge tolls. Now, Iran's foreign ministry has said that it held the first meeting with Oman on managing the strait on Monday. How the Memorandum of Understanding is to be implemented still remains unclear, with Iran especially sensitive about the issue of demining. In a joint statement following a meeting between the French President Emmanuel Macron and the Omani Sultan Haitham bin Tariq, Paris and Muscat have said that they will conduct joint demining operations. In response, Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Gharibabadi has insisted that under the agreement, only Iran is to conduct demining efforts. The tension continues to brew in the South China Sea. China has carried out aerial patrolling over the disputed Scarborough Shoal, and Beijing has called Scarborough an inherent part of China. It is said that such patrols serve as an effective countermeasure to cope with all sorts of rights violations and proactive acts. The Chinese military has said that these patrols are meant to resolutely safeguard China's territorial sovereignty and to uphold peace and stability in the South China Sea. The Chinese patrols have come in response to US-Philippine military drills near the Scarborough Atoll. On Monday, the Philippines claimed that a Chinese naval vessel, a Type 054B guided missile frigate, and 3 Chinese Coast Guard ships followed the bilateral maritime drills by the United States Coast Guard and Philippine Navy and Coast Guard 93 kilometers from the Scarborough Shoal. The Beijing did not directly acknowledge the encounter but then played it down, saying that it was an organized routine air and naval patrols in the South China Sea. Taiwan, on the other hand, has issued a strong warning to its military cadets. President Lai Ching-te has asked them not to succumb to China's spying activities and to defend freedom and democracy. The Taiwanese president was speaking at a Cold War-era college originally set up to teach against the perils of communism. The college, now part of the National Defense University, was founded in 1951, just 2 years after the defeated Republic of China government fled to Taiwan after losing a civil war to Mao Zedong's communists. Now, Taiwan and China, which views the democratically governed island as its own territory, have long spied on each other. Taiwan, in particular, has reported an increased number of Chinese espionage cases, especially in the armed forces. China has never renounced the use of force to bring Taiwan under its control, and its military operates daily around the island. A sudden blast has shattered the calm of Monaco, leaving the investigators racing to uncover what happened. The police in Monaco are searching for a suspect after an explosion left 3 people wounded. And according to the authorities, a couple in their 50s or 60s suffered some life-threatening injuries, while a 13-year-old suffered less serious injuries in the explosion. The emergency services then rushed to the scene, and according to reports, one of those wounded was Ukrainian oligarch Vadim Yurmulyayev. He's a multi-millionaire Monaco resident and has been subject to sanctions from Kiev since December 2023, which the Ukrainian security services reportedly said had stemmed from his alcohol business activity in Russian-occupied Crimea. The blast, in fact, took place at the entrance of a residential building in Monaco near the border to France, the microstate on the French Riviera known as a haven for billionaires and their luxury yachts.
It happened suddenly. There wasn't a sound just before it. That's just how it was. We didn't see it coming.
The incident has triggered a major investigation, with the authorities working to understand how the blast happened and who could be responsible for it. The public prosecutor, Stefan Thibault, said that the suspect had left a bag or a package in the building's lobby before leaving. He further added that nothing appeared for the moment to indicate as to why the building might have been targeted. The Monaco government said that the strong explosion was caused by a parcel bomb.
Visibly, an explosive device was placed in front of the entrance of a building, injuring several people. One person fled, running to the town of Beausoleil. We have been able to follow him with a camera in the town of Beausoleil. We have immediately informed the French National Police, who are working in collaboration with the Municipal Police of Beausoleil and obviously with the security of the Principality of Monaco.
Officers are now focusing on identifying the suspect and establishing the events that led to the blast. The search operation continues as authorities are piecing together information from the scene. Saudi Arabia's Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud met with the Chinese Vice President Han Zheng in Beijing. The Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud is on a two-day visit to China. In the meeting, the two leaders then reviewed avenues to further strengthen cooperation and reaffirmed their shared commitment to advancing ties between the two countries. They also discussed the latest regional and international developments, exchanged views on key issues, and emphasized commitment to continuing coordination on regional and international matters. The Chinese Vice President said that in recent years, under the strategic guidance of the top leaders of the two countries, the advancements of China and Saudi Arabia relations have maintained some pretty sound momentum. The Chinese Vice President Han Zheng said that as important members of the Global South, China and Saudi Arabia should enhance communications and coordination and should contribute to maintaining regional and world peace and stability. Now, Saudi Arabia's Foreign Minister Prince Faisal said that Saudi Arabia firmly abides by the One China principle and it is ready to work with China to continue advancing bilateral relations. Now, this year marks the 10th anniversary of the establishment of the comprehensive strategic partnership between China and Saudi Arabia. Amidst the ongoing West Asia crisis, a significant geopolitical realignment is now taking shape, involving Saudi Arabia, China and Pakistan. And this convergence is in fact anchored by a historic Saudi-Pakistan mutual defense agreement and is heavily supported by China's financial and infrastructure footprint, fundamentally changing the balance of power across West Asia and South Asia. Driven by the widening Israel-Iran conflicts and also a perception that the United States is an unreliable security guarantor, Riyadh has sought strategic autonomy and provides billions in terms of financial lifelines and oil-backed investments to sustain the bloc. Pakistan brings its military infrastructure and nuclear capability to the mix following the landmark September 2025 mutual defense agreement. Riyadh and Islamabad are bound to treat any aggression against one as an attack on both. China provides the economic shield. Beijing is working to integrate Saudi interests through the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. China has quietened its concerns over technology transfer to back the bloc as a means of anchoring its western flank and securing a direct land route to the Arabian Sea. Now, trade deals used to be forever, but not anymore. As India closes in on an interim trade agreement with Washington, New Delhi wants an exit ramp built in from day one, a sunset clause. So what's driving this? A sunset clause places an expiry date on an agreement unless all participating governments agree to extend it, transforming a permanent treaty into one that must periodically justify its continuation. Now, India isn't inventing this playbook, but it is just copying Brussels. The European Parliament recently inserted a sunset clause into the EU-US tariff arrangement, requiring it to expire on the 31st of December 2029 unless both sides agree to extend it with a mandatory comprehensive review beginning by the 30th of June 2029. So why does India want this? New Delhi wants protection against future shifts in US tariff policy that could reduce the value of concessions secured under the agreement. The fear is not to get undercut tomorrow. Indian officials are unhappy that Washington had proposed a lower 10% tariff under a Section 301 forced labor for countries like Indonesia and Pakistan. While India could face about 12.5%, that review deadline matters as well. The Trump administration must enforce Section 301 tariffs by July 24th, when the temporary 10% baseline tariff window expires. The sunset clause isn't new. The USMCA already carries a 16-year sunset provision with mandatory reviews every 6 years. The first one is due on the 1st of July 2026. So what's new is the smaller economies adopting it defensively against an unpredictable Washington. While sunset clauses give governments flexibility, they also create uncertainty for businesses making long-term investments and supply chain decisions. India's own history with ASEAN, where imports grew 234% against 130% export growth between FY 2009 and FY 2023, widening the deficit from $7.5 billion to $44 billion, is exactly the reason why New Delhi wants a contractual escape hatch this time round. The bottom line is that trade deals under Trump by the Americans aren't built to last. They're built to be negotiated, and that is the new normal. The car makers are increasingly replacing copper wiring with aluminium as they're looking to cut costs, reduce weight and improve the efficiency of electric vehicles. Ferrari and BMW are the latest manufacturers to make the switch, reflecting the broader trend across the global automotive industry. Now, for more than 2 centuries, copper has been the standard material used for electrical wiring, but rising copper prices and growing demand from clean energy projects and data centers are encouraging manufacturers to consider alternatives. The Ferrari said that it has started using aluminium power cables in its hybrid and electric vehicles. The company said that the change reduces the total weight of the vehicle wiring by up to 20%, helping to improve performance. The BMW said that it has been introducing aluminium wiring since 2011 and now uses it extensively in its latest electric vehicle platform. And other car makers, including the Stellantis, Tesla and several Chinese EV makers, have also moved towards aluminium wiring. The metal costs around a quarter of the price of copper, making it an attractive option as raw material costs continue to rise.